Hello, we are Kaylee Evans and Christina Whitworth coming to you today from Boise State's Leadership 490 class. We are going to be giving a presentation on the global view of Brazil and adding a little bit of additional information about what we personally think of their leadership styles. Before we get started, here are a few things about our country. Brazil is located in South America and is the largest country within South America. It is made up over 1,600 cities and has a population close to 212 million people. Majority of Brazilians speak Portuguese. A little fun fact about Brazilians: they are the only Portuguese-speaking people in Latin America. Other countries in South America come from Spanish descent. Therefore, Brazilians act differently than other Latin Americans. In Brazil, personal values are high on their scale of importance. Within all relationships, especially ones with their families, they deeply value respect, trust, honesty, and patience. Warmth and patience within their homes are important, even when it comes to speaking with children. Brazil has 26 states, and those states are split into 5 regions: the North, Northeast, Central West, Southeast, and South. They have been created and bordered this way based on physical, political, social, and economical similarities. They each have their own distinct ecosystem along with different climates and economies. Brazil is a country that has many different items they use for trade and export, and they all come from each of the different regions. From the North region, mineral extraction and forestry are the main economic activities. From the Northeast, the economy depends on cocoa, cotton, coffee production, and livestock breeding. Central West relies on livestock breeding, mining, and tourism to keep its economy afloat. The Southeast is where they have the larger industries such as machinery, aviation, finance, automobiles, and commerce. Then the South is known as the safest of all 5 regions to live in, as it has the lowest crime rate per capita and it relies on livestock breeding. In the Latin and Arab regions, their leadership relies heavily on nepotism. Brazil is led by the upper and upper middle class society, and often high-up jobs are granted to family and friends. Those who hold power in Brazil hold more entitlements, which includes picking and choosing who does what within the country. In 2019, President Jair Bolsonaro decided to nominate his already congressman's son, Eduardo, to become the next ambassador to the United States. In the early 2000s, Brazilian deputies threw out a bill that would outlaw nepotism in the government and Congress. The bill was proposed in the first place to discourage the widespread practice among politicians of employing their friends and relatives in high-up and well-paid positions. This bill would have prevented members of any government branch from hiring their blood relatives or even family through marriage. But the vote fell short and the bill was thrown out, and nepotism in Brazil continued. Brazilian society also recognizes and respects hierarchy and inequalities among people. The differing distribution of power allows for the fact that those who hold power have more entitlements than those who do not hold power. In the Brazilian society, status symbols of power hold great importance as well. And while it is great that Brazilians believe in protecting family at all costs, this doesn't always make for great politics. One thing that Brazil scores high in is uncertainty avoidance. This deals with the way society knows that the future is an unknown factor that cannot be predicted. With this being said, Brazil may have high need for those laws to be in place, but because of the high crime rates, Brazil also shows lack of an individual's need to obey those said rules. In this slide, we found a picture with President Trump alongside Brazil's president and his son Eduardo, who is newly appointed to a high-status job as an ambassador to the United States. President Juarez says his son is qualified for this position because he is a friend of Trump's children, he speaks Spanish and English, and he has great global experience. Most countries that don't practice nepotism would find that these qualities do not meet the job requirement description for a position of power such as ambassador to the U.S. But in Brazil, this is how the hiring ranking goes. It is not based on what you know or degrees you may have, but more who you know and what they are willing to do for you. While many people in Brazil have spoken out about how absurd they think it is that their government practices nepotism, nothing has been done to change the role of nepotism. It has even been speculated that our own president is using nepotism here in the United States, since his daughter Ivanka and her husband Jared both serve as advisors to President Trump. In this case, Ivanka does possess a bachelor's degree in economics, and Jared is also very well educated with multiple degrees. He possesses a bachelor's from Harvard in government and a JD MBA from New York University. So it could at least be argued that both Ivanka and Jared possess impressive degrees that somewhat meet requirements for their positions. Even with that, her education, Ivanka was said to have floundered in a video from the G20 summit where she awkwardly attempted to join the conversation of our world leaders. This is my personal leadership perspective on Brazil. Currently, with the hole Brazil seems to be digging its way out of, no, I would not like to lead in Brazil. Their government structure alone seems to be very easily shaken and taken apart from the inside. So much corruption over the last 20 years has done substantial damage to the Brazilian economy and government. I would like to say that going into Brazil, I could be a strong leader that may be able to help see their way out of the dark times they've been living in. But I feel that there is still too much damage to undo before they are able to make strides forward. Since Brazil has had so much corruption within its leaders, I don't feel like they would welcome an outside leader either. They seem to be set in sticking with their people, even though joining forces with the United States and supporting open free trade has been very, very beneficial to them. Honestly, Brazil just seems a bit messy, thanks to the way they have chosen to run things for the last few decades. I think if Brazil was able to turn some of the negative things around, it could be a great place to be a leader. Brazil is so very beautiful. The people are kind and value similar things that I myself value. If I could be a leader just to them and not have to mess with any of the politics, then sign me up. I would go to Brazil then. I would love to experience the rich culture and exotic foods. Not to mention go sightseeing in some of the most beautiful tropical and forest-covered lands in all the world. In fact, going to Rio de Janeiro to be part of Carnival has always been on my bucket list, as well as hiking to the top of the Christ the Redeemer statue and seeing the capuchin monkeys that are known in Rio for being pickpocketers and looters. For these things, I would love to go to Brazil, but it would be as a tourist, not a leader. Now I'm going to hand things over to Christina.
Hello, Christina here. I am going to continue telling you a bit more about Brazil and the leadership style, as well as give you my personal feelings about being a leader in Brazil. Based on the information we've shared so far, when doing business with people in Brazil, transformational leadership would work best. People within Brazil pride themselves on being respectful and understanding to traditions and social relations. Based on their societal norms, they should be easier to negotiate with and form relationships with. As the rate of population increases that Brazil has had over the years, it's increased by 2% each year. Currently, the population is at an all-time high, while the GDP is very low. This could easily change now that Brazil has a higher influx of women entering the workforce and prolonging having children. It is expected to rise by 2020, but in the meantime, it has affected the Brazilian economy. To help the issue in the wake of the recession, Brazil's government has showed economic activity. 2017 was the start of a slow recovery and growth of 1.1% of the GDP. The slow rise is a result of the weak labor market and uncertainties about the election and the truckers' general strike, which has brought everything to a screeching halt in May of 2018. Trying to restore fiscal sustainability in Brazil's economy is a huge struggle. In efforts to move forward, Brazilian's government has enacted a constitutional amendment that will limit the rise of public spending. With any luck, Brazil will see major changes by 2026 and have sustainable debt by 2023. While this is only 3 years away, to see change start to take effect, it will be an uphill battle with leaders involved. Here we note some of the things that are not important to Brazilian people. Punctuality or having set appointments and meeting times are things we tend to strictly cling to here in the US. Switching over to Brazilian customs and trying to live the way they do could prove to be challenging when it comes to being a leader. In our experience, our leaders are successful because they stick to schedules and agendas to get things accomplished. The way Brazil lacks interest in these things may be what contributed to their high crime rates, GDP drops, and unsustainable debt. Would I want to be a leader in Brazil? No, I would not like to be a leader in Brazil, but I would maybe enjoy visiting. If I were in Brazil, I would enjoy all the different foods they have to eat, especially the barbecue meats. They have a traditional meat called picanha, which sounds delicious. I think I would enjoy the talkative, friendly nature of the Brazilian people, since I am a people person. Because of my social nature, I admire the importance Brazilians place on human interactions and how they live in the moment. Brazilians also value innovation and transformation, and are trying to modernize the best they can and keep up with technology. However, I am also a very punctual person, and I think the fact that Brazilians often run late and do not need to be punctual would be difficult for me to work with. I also enjoy having a clear timeline of when things need to be finished, and in Brazil, that is acceptable to have an unpredictable timeline for business, and I think that would be extremely difficult. Since I'm not from Brazil and do not personally know any of the leaders there, it would be difficult for me to become one, since their leadership style is a hierarchy based on nepotism. Brazil also has a higher crime rate than where I live, so I think I'll stick to leading where I'm at and not venture to lead in Brazil. In conclusion, Brazil is an insanely beautiful, and we both would jump at the opportunity to be a tourist there and to take in all the sights, taste the food, and experience all aspects of the Brazilian culture. Unfortunately, that is where our excitement for Brazil ends. Neither of us have any interest in becoming leaders with the current state of the country. Even if we wanted to become leaders, we wouldn't stand a chance, since neither of us have any insider connections to land us high status positions. In some serious changes were made to Brazil's government structure, I think Brazil could be turned around and possibly become a place where we'd want to be leaders, but for the meantime, we'll stick to being tourists.